Hello, my name is Namaya Stevenson, and today I will be giving a wildlife management recovery plan for the California red-legged frog. So before I start my presentation, I wanted to put in this interesting fact that most historians and scientists believe that the California red-legged frog inspired Mark Twain to write one of his famous short stories. For the scientific classification, they come from the class Amphibia of the amphibians, order Ernura, which are frogs, family Ranidae, the family that involves true frogs, genus Rana, and for species, I listed two different species names because people believe that it's either a subspecies of one or one's northern, one's southern, but overall, I will be doing a presentation on the California red-legged frog. So I involve both species names. It's really just a discussion between scientists which one is more scientifically correct. The California red-legged frog is native from the northern parts of California all the way down to Baja California in Mexico. This image of distribution was taken from the International Union for Conservation of Nature in 2008, so of course it's changed during the years. The federal listing under the Endangered Species Act for this species is threatened and the population is currently decreasing. Although there's no population estimate that exists for this species, they have seen a great decline in breeding populations and a great decline in areas where they're generally found. And they are listed as vulnerable as well under the IUCN. Although I stated in the previous slide where the red-legged frog could be found, I wanted to go deeper into that discussion. So the California red-legged frog is almost exclusively found in California, with a few sightings out of the United States and Baja, Mexico. Historically, they could be seen throughout most of California's coastal areas, but the species has disappeared from an estimated of 70% of their original population. These images kind of show that change within the first two pictures. The first picture shows that they were further in the Midlands within California, but as the years progress, they just get closer and closer to the coast, whereas eventually they kind of disappear from some coastal areas. The last image shows actually the recovery units that have been placed by the California government, and I will go deeper into what the recovery plan is and where exactly those recovery units are later in the presentation. The California red-legged frogs live in a Mediterranean climate, which is characterized by temporal and spatial changes in habitat quality. In addition to climatic fluctuations, the habitats used by this species typically change in extent and suitability in response to the dynamic nature of floodplains, such as natural water flow, sedimentation regimens that create and modify to eliminate deep pools, backwater areas, ponds, marshes, etc. Therefore, the frog uses a variety of areas, including various aquatic, riparian, and upland habitats. Breeding sites of this species are in a variety of aquatic habitats. Larvae, tadpoles, and metamorphs have been collected from streams, deep pools, backwaters within streams and creeks, ponds, marshes, almost anywhere. They've also been found in artificial impoundments, which is ironic because impoundments are one of the reasons why the species is in decline, but they found a way to use the artificial water impoundments to actually breed in, so that definitely helps. The females generally will lay their eggs upon emergent vegetation, but it's been seen that they also lay it within the emergent vegetation under the water as well. They like to go into places that are dense and shrubby just so that they're kind of covered and protected so that predators aren't able to see them as easily. And the females will lay their eggs within still or slow moving water, although it's been seen that they kind of get washed away in high moving waters, and it's still possible for the metamorphs to grow up into adults if that happens to occur. The California red-legged frog is terrestrial as an adult and considered aquatic as a juvenile. They are the largest native frog in western United States, and their diet consists of invertebrates or small vertebrates such as mice. The females are larger in length and weight than the males, and the species is characterized by their posterior abdomen and hind legs that are often a red or salmon pink. The back is characterized by a small black flecks and larger irregular dark blotches within the indistinct outlines on a brown, gray, olive, or reddish brown background color. So as you see within the pictures, I showed a red, a brownish red, and then almost like a dark olivish brown color. But their main distinct is all their little flecks around them, and then their back legs being reddish. Both male and female have paired vocal sacs, but the males will communicate to the females through short, soft grunts, and then after their grunts, they'll finish their call with a deep growl. They use this not only during reproductive season, but as just communication to determine the difference between male and female. The females also will communicate, but they don't communicate with grunts or growls. The life expectancy of the species is roughly up to 8 years. They haven't been really bred in captivity, so it's roughly an estimate on what they've seen in the wild. The species is oviparous and practice external fertilization through a process called emplexus. Through emplexus, the female will lay her eggs, and the male will soon after deposit his sperm directly on top of the eggs, thus fertilizing them. They breed from December to April, and the female will lay her eggs on emergent vegetation above the water. But there have also been, like, the more northern California frog will lay them in the water, so it all kind of depends on which region they are and the temperatures outside. The eggs will hatch within weeks, and they'll stay in the water until they completely went through metamorphosis, and that will happen in late summer or early fall. After their second year following their metamorphosis, they are reproductive, and once they are adults, only 1/3 of that population will actually survive. They don't like to count it as the tadpoles because the tadpoles are a major food source for different animals. So once they're adults, they kind of count, okay, this is their survival rate. So as adults, their survival rate is only 1/3. And distinctive characteristics of the tadpoles are, and the larvae, is that their background color of the body is dark brown or olive with darker spots. A line of very small, indistinct gold-colored spots becomes the dorsolateral fold. So they're easy to distinguish between different species of frogs within California. California red-legged frogs suffer from a large amount of threats. These threats include degradation and loss of habitat through agriculture, urbanization, mining, overgrazing, recreation, timber harvesting, non-native plants, introduced predators, use of pesticides, water diversions, degraded water quality, disease, impoundments, and many, many more. But the number one threat to them would be the loss of habitat through agriculture. Since the 1996 listing of the California red-legged frog, several conservation efforts have been undertaken by various federal, state, and local agencies and private organizations. Under the federal regulatory protection, the frog is listed under the Endangered Species Act, and in 2001, the state of California finalized the designation of critical habitat for the red-legged frog. A critical habitat is defined as a specific area which has been found essential to the conservation of the species and which may require special management and considerations or protection. For federal conservation measures, various forests within California have also taken action. The Los Pedres National Forest has completed a forest-wide riparian conservation strategy that augments and amends the Forest Land and Resource Management Plan. which provides management guidelines for the conservation of riparian habitats and associated species. The Cleveland National Forest has been completing extensive surveys of historic and potential habitat for the California red-legged frogs. The Sierra National Forest and El Dorado National Forest conduct surveys for the species. The Bureau of Land Management has developed and is implementing national guidelines and standards for livestock grazing. The National Resource Conservation Service has carried out the Elkhorn Slow Watershed projects, which has established with farmers to reduce the amount of sedimentation and runoff. The Golden Gate National Recreation Area has developed several programs that provide benefit to the California red-legged frog. As for state measures, the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection helps with providing timber harvest plans and non-industry timber management plans to avoid take of the species. The Department of Parks and Recreation has programs that benefit the species, and lastly, the California National Guard has sponsored surveys to monitor the number of California red-legged frogs. The recovery plan made for the California red-legged frog was created by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and signed by the operations manager of the California government. The objective of this recovery plan is to delist the species, and 8 recovery units have been established for the California red-legged frog. In the right-hand picture, you can see numbers labeled 1 through 8. Number 1 is the Sierra Nevada foothills and Central Valley Forest. 2 is the North Coast Range foothills and Western Sacramento River Valley. 3 is the North Coast and North San Francisco Bay. 4 is South and East San Francisco Bay. 5 is the Central Coast. 6 is the Diablo Range and Salinas Valley. 7 is the Northern Transverse Range and Titapy Mountains, I believe is how you pronounce it. And 8 is the Southern Transverse and Peninsular Ranges. Because of the varied status of the subspecies and differing levels of threats throughout its range, recovery strategies differ per recovery unit to best meet their goal of delisting the species. The 4 listed statements within the first image that you see on the left hand side are actually the 4 main points that they're using in order to go in order of what's most important to delist the species. I won't read them out to you because that's pointless, because I know you can read through them. So I'll move on to say that the protection of existing populations will occur through preservation and management of occupied drainages and core areas. Core areas are areas in which major breeding populations are occurring or where the largest populations are occurring. So through this and through reduction of threats, they believe that they can delist the species, thus increasing their population and taking them off the endangered species list. Thank you for watching my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email me.